Okay, so I realise I mentioned this in an earlier video, but I kind of wanted to go in a little bit more detail. Now, in order to go into a bit more detail, this one is probably going to be a bit more spoilery than some of the previous videos, and I will put up a warning on this particular video. It's up to you. Personally, I would recommend reading the comics first before watching this, but I leave that up to you. So, we all ready? Cool. So, this is a question, strangely enough, this is a direct quote from one of the issues I wrote, which was issue 2. And he writes this on pages a note, which is, does Sal resent vibes? And I think this is a more complicated question than on the surface that you might think, because there's a few elements with these things. So first of all, I think you've got to look at the positives with these things, because on the one hand, vibes, in some respects, they grew up together. They are very sort of close, and in Sal's case, I think vibes kind of brought some stuff out of her and kind of got her out of her shell a bit more, sometimes to her detriment. And I think that there is an element of that resentment there, in the sense that she kind of thinks, well, if you hadn't gotten my way, I might have achieved more. And you have to ask yourself, yeah, maybe you would, but what would that have served you as a person? And I think Vibes has kind of helped her be a more independent person. And likewise, I would say Sal as kind of someone to kind of keep Vibes, not exactly under control, but kind of being a more positive influence in her life too. I think it kind of works both ways, because I think it's kind of interesting how in recent times we've kind of seen a few stories that have these kind of dynamics. So I think the major ones I can think of off the top of my head, and I'm sure you can think of more, but I mean a big one would be Anna and Elsa in Frozen. And if you think about that, so Susie did this great pick of Vibes as Anna and Sal as Elsa, and I think there is a weird parallel. I don't know why, because like I say, we had this idea for years, and yet somehow it does kind of work really well, in that Vibes is very impulsive, and she's, in a weird way, she's kind of had a bit of an isolated life and has struggled, but kind of is very upbeat and positive and wants to kind of get out there and do stuff. Whereas I think Sal is a bit more introverted and she suffers for it. And yeah, and I think that is one thing that kind of inevitably leads to the two conflicting with each other. Now, of course, we do get to the later point where Sal struggles, and I think there's elements of this where I think Sal feels that a lot of people kind of gravitate towards Vibes because she's very outgoing, because she's very confident, and I think sometimes she struggles with that. And Sal, I think, is a different kind of character, and she is strong in a different way, and when she does have to be leader, she does, line up to it. She does do the job, and I think it's interesting to see how kind of that works as a dynamic. And it is worth remembering, despite everything she goes through and gets hammered pretty hard, I've got to say, people have pointed this out to me, that Sal takes a lot of crap, but I think the crucial thing to remember is when it counts, she does what needs to be done, and when the time comes and she says to Vibes, this is the thing you've got to do, Vibes does it. Even when Vibes sort of says, but this is a crazy thing to do, Sal says, you do it, and she does it. So I think there is that implicit trust. So I suppose my conclusion to this, and I think this will be explored a bit more as we kind of go on with the story, because I really want to finish this story, is that ultimately they both love each other, they both care about each other, they are still friends, they're not blood related, but there is that kind of element to them that they are different characters, and that means inevitably they will butt heads sometimes. Vibes is a bit of a wind-up merchant. She will take the mick, and Sal isn't always in the mood for it. And I think it's a dynamic that works. It's, in effect, the straight one up against the kind of wackier one, which, there's any number of partnerships you can name for that. And like I said, we don't really need to get into all of them. And I would say my question is, does Sal resent vibes? Yes, she does, but there is a process whereby she eventually realises that the things she resents her for, like, Vibe struggles more than she realises. And I think this is true. Sometimes I think people make this mistake. Like, sometimes people who are very outwardly confident or they perform, those people can be just as introspective sometimes, can have confidence issues, same as anyone else. It's just at certain points they're very good at projecting that confidence. And I think we are in danger of sort of going like, they're show-offs, all blah blah blah. And like I say, to be fair, some people are just like that, and that's fine. But I think there are some people where it's just like, well, you have that naturally, and when you're on your own, they find that harder, and that's okay. Different people. But anyway, it was just kind of a quick thing that was in my head. But equally, like I say, if you've read the comics, or even if you haven't and you've just been like watching a few of these videos, what do you think? Do you think Sal resents Vibes? And if you do, is she right to resent her? Or if you think she doesn't resent her, again, show you're working. Anyway, all the best, guys. Much love. Mwah.